Hi, good evening. Thank you all for joining us. My name is Rochelle Rose. I'm the National Director of Actors Programs at the SAG-AFTRA Foundation, and I'm really excited to introduce this young, enthusiastic group of content creators. First, I want to welcome to the stage writer-director Amara and co-writer Alex Bloom. The fabulous actress Madison Lawlor. And the lovely Andrew Pifko.
Hi guys, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So first of all, I'd love to speak to you, Alex and Amara, about the genesis of this project. Where did the idea come from, and how did you both come to write it together?
Yeah, so, wow, okay. So I had been wanting to do a love triangle story for a while. I'm a bisexual woman myself. I'm fluid and kinky and queer. And I really wanted to do, I have found myself caught in a love triangle many, many, many years ago. And just the duality and being torn between two people. So this story is not based on my life in any way, but just that theme. I wanted to explore that triangle aspect. And then, wow, so we teamed up together. We wanted to do something that was like almost like a Greek tragedy, but very modern and contemporary. So it's not necessarily the normal, typical dramatic form, I guess you could say, because we're kind of following three characters. But from there, we developed the story with Jenna Sidici, our producer.
Yeah, we had, kicking around the idea for a while, and Amara and I have a production company, and we really wanted to do a feature. And we kind of had a meeting one day in the yard and thought to ourselves, like, wait a second, maybe it's a father and a daughter. And, oh, I just gave away the thing, and this is recorded. Okay. Well, anyway.
We wanted to do a love triangle, and we were having, we kept trying to just work on the story and work it, and we kind of stumbled upon this dynamic of what if we took it a step further and it not just be a love triangle, but actually involve a father and daughter. We'd never seen anything like that before. It's definitely different. We like doing things that are outside of the box. Yeah, and then from there it kind of took off, and it was the three of us who worked on it, myself, Alex, and Jenna.
And then as we developed the script, it was important to try to get the themes of the day in there, the ideas of how people relate to each other, and how your past informs your present, but you can change and you can still grow no matter how. You don't have to become
your parents. You don't have to let your past dictate your future.
Yeah. You can always grow.
So at this point, I'm wondering, I'm going to hand over to James Patrick Herman, who actually is the moderator this evening. And
thank you.
Sorry.
Hey, James.
Stole my Uber.
Oh.
Such an LA story. So I'm obsessed with this movie. The title alone had me. I mean, you had me at the title. I mean, daddy issues, very relatable. Tell me what your inspiration was for this film that you co-wrote and directed.
Yeah, so my inspiration was just telling a modern love story that I never saw before.
That's for sure. I've definitely never seen this.
Yeah, I was just
Love
telling them
triangle.
right before you got in, that I'm a bisexual woman. I'm fluid and kinky and queer, and I wanted to do something that reflected that, and just kind of let our imagination go and see what we came up with, and this is what we came up with.
There's one of my favorite parts of the film is where they're discussing labels, identity politics, such an important theme. This film feels very zeitgeisty to me for a number of reasons, and I commend you on that. It's one thing to just make a love story that I haven't seen before, but also to kind of touch on what we're talking about in the culture right now is like very, and I don't
for
know.
me, when I had my first girlfriend, I didn't really know how to identify, because I was like, well, but I have been in love with men before. It doesn't like erase that. I don't think I'm a lesbian, but I'm definitely not straight. And then it was just like saying that word bisexual has such a stigma to it. Not that we portrayed a fluid girl that was monogamous. Jasmine's obviously different from me, but just how to define yourself and find that label was something that I struggled with for a while. Now I say bisexual, and I say the word just because I feel like we have to say it, because there is a stigma, and we are here and we're real people, and it's not a phase. So that's kind of how I've come to identify. But at the time, yeah, I had trouble myself kind of figuring out what my label was and if I needed one at all.
So that part of, the dialogue, did that come directly from your own experiences? Did that part of that come from you as well?
He wrote the dialogue, so a lot of it we got inspired, but he wrote the dialogue.
Yeah, I mean, I hate labels. I've always kind of had a thing with that. A lot of my studies and reading is about how there's violence and issues that revolve around just labeling anybody, regardless of what it is, ethnicity, sexual preference, religion. We're human beings. That's enough. And so
in the end, she ends up just saying, "I'm an American."
Right.
So
Thank you.
Yeah, Jasmine chooses not to self-identify.
Yeah, and it was interesting actually. That was a scene that we both kind of felt very strongly about and had thought about individually, and then came together and realized, like, hey, we both were kind of thinking the same thing. Perfect.
We weren't ever addressing the conversation at all in earlier drafts, and then I was like, no, we have to have a conversation, regardless of if they identify what they are or not. Like, it would be natural to talk about it, so they need to talk about it. And then he was also thinking the same thing, and yeah. And then there's that great I'm an American line, which I think is just
so
hilarious.
Because she's not American.
Well, the actor's not. No, she's British.
Can I ask you how you approached this character with her, because she kind of does have a sexual identity that she's able to somewhat articulate?
Yeah. I think the way I approached this character was I found the thing I identified with the most in Maya was she wasn't focused on that aspect of her life. She knew what she was, so she was focusing on the other things, which is finding her place in the world in general. And I think that was a subject I can really relate to, and I think I have a hard time with that. Like, where do I fit into this puzzle? I feel out of place, I feel weird and awkward, and I think that's sort of was what I focused on, was her emotional state at the time, because she was confident in what her sexuality was. It wasn't something that she was really questioning, so it allowed me to focus more on the emotional side of her journey and the big picture, which is overwhelming.
And I feel like that's something else that makes this film feel fresh and current. There's no torturous, struggle with her sexuality.
That was one thing that attracted me to the role so much. It's like, no, she knows who she loves and who she's attracted to, and I liked that wasn't part of what her struggle was that. I thought that was a fresh take.
I'll just say coming out stories are extremely vital to our community.
100%.
And
yes.
that we've seen a lot of them, and for us, we just kind of wanted to veer off and do something different, where when you meet the characters, they've got their own things going, and it's not really about them discovering their sexuality so much as exploring them.
Right, and that felt very contemporary for it's set in LA, and it just felt very current to me. Can I ask you, your character has daddy issues of his own, correct?
I'm sorry, has what?
Daddy issues of his own.
Absolutely.
Right, would you talk, and I think that's interesting because obviously, you have the man who plays your father. I mean, there's a very complex relationship, with the dead mother and the really domineering father, and the son trying to live up to his father's expectations. I just like that it shows a variety of quote-unquote daddy issues, right? And so would you talk a little bit about how you approached the character with that backstory?
I mean, you always try to find, I always try to find a particular way in, and Alex, wrote the OCD into the script and into the character. So I might not be OCD myself, but everybody obsesses about something. It might be a restaurant or a yoga class or something. So my way into any character is find out that little nugget of yourself and take it to the extreme version of whatever the script demands. So that becomes sort of the trunk of the tree. And then you start doing the branches of like, oh, I'm doing this to, Montana because my father did this to me. And so you sort of find your basis, and then you know where you're going camping, and then you find your sort of side road trips, to put it one way. And that was my way in. And then you just try to find the colors. You just react off of really strong performances. It's just acting as reacting, and obviously it's a wealth of of talent to react off of. So that becomes a huge part of it. Yeah, so that was sort of my way in. And then I used to lifeguard, and so I actually saw some people who OD'd, and unfortunately I came too close to that. So there's a visceral thing, that you try to take onto your own, personal action of somebody who's ODing, somebody who's shooting up. So there's certain technical elements of, what do they look like? What happens to your skin? Where do your eyes go? Just, does the skin get cold and clammy? How does that affect your voice? And I think that's more the ephemera than the basis of the character, but that's all, part of the big package.
Your character struggles with drug addiction, seemingly sex addiction. There's a lot of obsession and compulsion that dominates your character, and the sometimes bad choices he makes.
Sometimes.
Well, I'm trying to approach this from a non-judge. Addiction is a disease, and it's very rampant, and it can manifest in so many different ways, which is another thing that I feels very just timely about this film. It explores the different manifestations of, say, addiction, and how it can destroy, not just one person's life, but, a family, so to speak. How did you, dealing with the challenge of, pretending to shoot up into your ankle. How did you approach, I guess, this character's various addictions and the struggle to find himself within that, and also to play all of these roles? The movie also has a lot to say about role playing, right? And one of my favorite monologues is yours, where you're complaining. You're like, "Oh, I have to be the father and the mother and the sugar daddy and the therapist," and and I just think, wow, you're playing this role. And this character is playing all of these roles while role playing, and it just seems like a very complex performance that you kind of effortlessly tackled.
Yeah, it's very sweet of you to say. Again, it begins sort of with the technical elements of things that I've experienced, and then you just do your research. Frankly, what is it like to be OCD? What is it like to have heart palpitations that come about, with the use of a certain drug? I think we talked about a certain type of drug on set versus a different type of drug, and how that would affect you. So you do your research. But in terms of that notion of using drugs to mask a problem, when I get upset, I just to calm myself down, I have a good meal, just to sort of give myself a salve of some sort. So what's the extension of that? It is instead of a meal, there you go. Instead of a meal, it is drugs. Again, what is the furthest exaggeration of that? That you don't want to talk to somebody because they're a relative. What if you really don't want to talk to somebody? So it's do what you do, but just crank up the volume, crank up the emotional volume. And I don't know if people are familiar with In the Next Room. It's a play about the development of female sexuality around the turn of last century. It's also called The Vibrator Play. It was done at the Kennedy Center. And it played this character, Leo Irving. And he's an artist, and he loves Leonardo da Vinci. And I was like, I don't know what it is for one artist to have, to have the idol of Leonardo da Vinci, but I do know what a fanboy is like at Comic-Con. And I was obsessed with Star Trek: The Next Generation. I'm like, oh, well, do you have the Jedi this, and do you have the Star Wars that? And, oh, have you... And so that's your way in. because you just map over what it is to be a fanboy. It's like, oh, and he used pointillist drawings, and then the beautiful thing, the brush that he would use. So you take that which is from your own life or your own personal experience or the experience that exists in the current world, as you're talking about the current nature of this film, and you just sort of map it over.
And what was the way into drug and sex addiction?
I had drug and sex addiction. No, I didn't. When I'm upset, I eat. When I'm happy, I reward myself with food, and that's my happy place. There's a couple sushi places that I love, a couple Thai places that I love, so that's my go-to. But what if I went a little further, and you replace Thai food with OxyContin? If you replace this with that, and that was my way in.
Well, that makes sense. I mean, binge eating disorder is actually the most prevalent eating disorder in America. So that makes perfect sense to me. I want to go back to the daddy issues question. How did you approach your character's daddy issues, which are also complex, because she finds out this idea she had about her father was all wrong. So she kind of has to struggle with this new idea about her father. And her mother and her stepfather walks in on her masturbating, and it's horrifying, so there's a lot of complex, I feel like, daddy issues that your character struggles with as well. Would you talk a little bit about that and how you approach those?
Yeah, I think in a sort of similar manner, you have to find the thing about your life that you can relate to in a really emotional way, and then sort of plug that in, but using different language. And so I think about how terrible it feels when your life is out of your own control, and when you don't have answers to questions that matter to you, or when you don't know these things about your past or these parts of your story that you really care about. And I think in my life, I am searching in many ways to find control, and I think that Maya kind of wants that too, and she wants to know her story, and she wants to know who she is. And so I think I sort of latched onto that idea of identity in a sense of belonging to where does she fit into the world, and how does the world see her, and how can she express herself in a way that people will understand. And in terms of relating to daddy issues, I have an amazing family, but I think about all the different ways in which people and life and society can let you down. And I think that's really easy to personalize. There's so many issues in the world right now, and so many ways in which I constantly feel let down just by the way that people and society treats other individuals, or latching onto that idea, that similar feeling of being extremely let down and saddened by events was it was pretty easy for me to find, not easy, but there's so many things and terrible tragedies to draw from in life that I think share a similar feeling. So that's sort of how I found my way in.
And what did you want to say with this script in terms of, daddy issues?
Well, that's a good question. I wanted to say that it's never too late to be the person who you think you can be, right? I think that even though you may have demons inside of you, you may have struggles that who knows where they came from. Maybe they came from, I think of daddy issues, I think of daddy as a overarching theme as well as an individual person,
Like the patriarchy?
Exactly. Yeah, sure. Like in some way or another, kind of like what Madison's saying, we all, even if we have a fantastic childhood and upbringing, we still have issues with patriarchy, authority, judgment. And it was really important for me when writing this, and a great opportunity to kind of put characters out there and show them existing in life, and then make sure that they grow on their own. They make choices on their own, rather than, being driven by some exterior thing. And I think that is a growing up, part of growing up. And I also think that we're always growing up. We don't just stop growing up when we turn 18 and then that's it. I'm 42, I'm still growing up. And, so those things.
And I guess why was it important to you to explore, you know, quote unquote daddy issues from a variety of perspectives, which I think is so, you know, clever and moving. You know, you're seeing it from someone who is a father, you're seeing it from a daughter, you're seeing it from a troubled
because
girl.
issues are from multiple perspectives. And whether you're the father who has trouble or trouble with your father or the daughter or whoever else, we all can somehow find a commonality in that. And it's important for everyone to know, okay, what's going on in my life, I may be having a struggle, somebody else is too, and we can find a common ground somewhere on it, even if it's just the fact that we both know what it's like to struggle with something.
What did you want to say with this film? What, you know, message did you want to put out there?
I wanted to explore characters in a way that they were kind of free to be themselves, and as the filmmaker, I wasn't really judging them or kind of telling the audience how to feel about them. So we show you guys a lot of stuff, but I'm never kind of I never was trying to hint on just being on Maya's side of it. So I wanted to explore a love triangle or 3 different vantage points in a way that wasn't necessarily telling you to hate one person or love one person. You know, the situation itself is the antagonist in this film, the crux that they're all in together. And even though the visual style, in a sense, is from Maya's point of view, the colors kind of evolve as she evolves as a person, and so does the pace and the style of the film. I wanted to still keep it in a way that we're just showing these situations and not necessarily telling you how to feel about them. That's for you to decide.
How did you feel about, I think, being described as like the baby of David Lynch and Wes Anderson?
Oh, I mean, someone said that. I didn't. That is not my.
I know. Oh, yeah. That was definitely said about you. I just wondered.
Someone
like,
said
I was
that
like, ooh, I wonder how like she'll feel about that. How do you feel about that?
Oh well, it was a huge compliment to me. But those men are like giants to me. So that was a compliment for me. Those are like some of my favorite filmmakers. But I certainly would not necessarily. I don't know. That was very humbling, but yeah, it was a compliment. I don't see it as a bad thing.
What filmmakers inspired your vision for this film?
So when I started directing, I kind of was just following my own vibe, and I didn't even necessarily look to other filmmakers. I didn't go to film school. I was actually, been a SAG actor for 12 years. So I was out here acting for many, many years before I ever picked up a camera. And then when I finally did, I was just editing everything just in the way I saw it. So I also edited the entire film. So for me, I wasn't necessarily like trying to emulate a certain type of director. When I started making my own little videos and showing them to Alex, he's like, oh, that's kind of like this, or that's kind of like that. And then I would go back and watch old films and kind of see and be inspired. But I'm extremely inspired by Wes Anderson. I love him. But I would never even put myself like on the same anywhere.
I think it's important. I think it's important for young actors today to be able to create their own.
It's extremely
content.
important. Yeah.
Would you? I mean, you know, like you said, you've been a SAG actor for 12
Absolutely.
years.
So I came here. I grew up in Florida, and I came here after high school to attend the American Academy of Dramatic Arts. And I went there, and then I was doing lots of acting auditions and commercials. I never got like the big break that I wanted, you know, that series regular role or that like big feature film. And I was doing a play, and a girl I was in the play with was like, hey, let's get, you seem like you like to get shit done. Let's get cameras and get stuff done. I mean, that's literally what she said to me. And I was like, okay. And I did editing back in high school, but I never thought I would be a director. It was never even a thought in my head. I always wanted to be an actor. And then I just kind of got a Canon and a Mac and just started editing my own little projects, and it's kind of just what came out. And then I, you know, set the goal to make my first feature film.
But I would imagine the actors would feel much more comfortable in the hands of a director who
I would hope
knows
so.
the other side of it, right? You know, you two must have had, I want to talk to you about casting these two, because you must have had very specific notions of who these characters were, and just talk to me about how they came to, like, did you both audition for this, and talk to me about how you ended up selecting
really specific I had very specific ideas of, you know, color palette and wardrobe, but like the and music, but which they're all original songs, by the way, and the musicians in the audience tonight, so holler.
I have to say, I feel like the music is like its own character in the film. The music helps to tell, and I feel like this is an example of really music at its best in a film, because it enhances the story. It helps tell the story. It tells you so much about the characters. I was curious to ask you about that, because
we'll go right back to the casting question. But with the music, I love editing to music. I love like doing the musical montages and sitting and doing it to just editing to a rhythm. So I had already edited the film, actually, and we had a bunch of songs picked out, and we couldn't get the rights to any of them. We couldn't afford any of them.
It's very expensive.
Yes, and I know this guy here, Max Waller, and I literally called him crying, like, I can't get the rights to any of my songs. Can you please help me? And him and his partner, his boy Patrick, they did everything. So
the hip hop,
all of it.
Wow.
Yeah. All besides the classical songs, guys. There's like those 2 or 3 classical songs, but other than that, they did everything. And that was a huge blessing. And he was able to write the songs to what I had already edited. So he not only was capturing this vibe and this voice, he was having to stick to the rhythm of something that I had already edited the whole film. So that's just a testament to him.
Very talented guy.
Yeah. But yeah, with the casting, back to the casting process, I wanted to do it, like the old-fashioned way. I want to support actors that are out there auditioning. So I didn't want to go on Instagram and find someone. I didn't want to go, not that there's anything wrong, but I wanted people that were going to come into the room prepared, ready to read, and know how to do it. And so we just put, the very traditional way. I actually cast the film myself. And we put out the breakdowns, auditioned hundreds of people. And then we had Madison and Montana finally got narrowed down and did chemistry reads together, and they were brilliant together. And then actually with Andrew, who plays Simon, I couldn't find a guy. I did the casting myself, but I'm not a casting director, so I don't have the contacts. I don't know, there's a whole nother job that comes with it other than just kind of posting stuff on breakdowns and reading people, which is how I cast everyone else. So at that point, what are those ladies' names?
Dayton Walters casting.
Yeah, so we, our producer, we brought on a casting director to just find that one character, the Simon character.
Such a pivotal character, right?
And very difficult to find the right kind of actor, because if you lean one way, it's too creepy. If you lean another way, it's too docile, and it was really difficult.
We had a really tough time finding that character.
I'm sure, because it's such a delicate dance he performs between playing all these roles within roles.
Yeah, we went looking for lifeguards, but we couldn't find them.
And I'm sure you had a very specific image. Now, the image you had in your mind, did he
actually
that, or
yeah, I mean, for that part, I did have a particular actor as just an inspiration of how to like write the words, not like
the same actor that I wanted.
Probably, yeah. And
who is this actor?
Well, wait, you're talking about no, the person that I wrote the thing with that in mind, he is very much similar to. But then we had other actors, it's kind of like archetypes, you try to, it's not like, it has to be this person. It's just, this is someone who's around, and I can kind of like hear how they might say this or see how they might do this. And then you write in the script. But then what's nice is a fresh actor comes in and does it their own way, which is the better. Yeah.
Because he doesn't, I feel like if you would have, I don't know, like I have ideas of actors who could have played this, but it would be hard for me to like not see their image.
Their other roles.
Distracting, right?
And it's distracting, and that because I'm, I feel like I haven't seen you do a role like this, it's easier for me to like believe.
I feel the same way. I like to. I sometimes when actors are a little too famous, it's like you're watching them and not the character. And I loved that everyone's amazing working actors, but none of them are like so famous that their personal life precedes them. And I love that about this film. Right. Probably one day it will.
Tell me what now it sounds like it was a long audition process. Tell me what the audition process was like from your perspectives, would you please?
Sure. So the first audition was a self-tape where you sent the sides and given a brief character description, you send it in, and I go to this one place in North Hollywood, Joe Kell Studios. He's great. Give him a little shout out. No, he's good.
He's great. I went there after you recommended.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
Yeah, beautiful lighting, good sound, and just a really warm, welcoming environment. So you try to get it roughly in the ballpark. You never know. Obviously, the creators of any project will have a very specific vision, aesthetically, artistically, whatever it's going to be. But you do, like you were saying, Alex, you do your thing. Thankfully, it came to a callback. It's just you. At that point, you sort of bring the same. You bring the same work, the same preparation, all the same things. You prepare yourself for it going one way or another. Like, that's great, but now do it as a mad German scientist. Do it as an Israeli soul. Like, just be plastic. Be elastic, because you never know where it's going to go. I was in a really bad car crash 2 days before the callback. And my car was run off the road and it was split in two, and I almost went over onto the 101. It was pretty bad. It was. It's a new construction of the road going up into Universal Studios. For those of you who know the area, and it was
like something really traumatic.
It was, and it was a new construction. I say that because had it not been new, it's not like the flimsy old concrete, and I definitely would have gone over. All this to say, so this is one of these, like, you got to ask yourself, like, fuck it, what would Barbra Streisand do? She'd strap up her ankle and she'd go. And I'm not going to say a buddy of mine had dental surgery recently and I borrowed some of the medication. I'm not going to say that because that's illegal. So I didn't do that. I'm saying if somebody whose name rhymes with Dandrew Lifko, maybe they did it. Wrapped it up, and yeah, it hurt like hell. And that's when I
didn't even know that.
No idea until now.
So that was part of my process. Not a process I recommend, but you do it, and it's not a matter of like use the pain. Don't. I mean, it's like, it's. There are actors who work with that method. I'm not. I'm just sort of like show up on time, know your lines, leave your baggage at the door. I think you'll have a longer career that way. But then, yeah, and I have to say, a good callback, and this has always been true, a good callback will always feel like the first day of rehearsal. And that's what this felt. And that really gives you faith, not just in the script, but in the logistics of a production, that this is not going to be, poorly organized, that they have an intent, they have a vision, things are organized, everything, not just the aesthetic or the music or the vision, but just the logistics of the crew. And obviously our crew, Nico Aguiar is our director of photography, knowing like he was on board, and you get a sense of that with the callback. So that, seeing that and coming up face to face with that in the callback gives you that extra push that you need in the callback scenario as the sort of the final coup de grace on the casting process.
And tell me what it was like from your perspective, and what ideas of your own did you bring to this character?
So I got the audition through my representatives, my agent and manager, and as soon as I got the script, I was like, okay, I really like this, but I don't think that they're gonna think I'm right for it because I'm blonde and whatever. And so I was stressing out. I was like on the phone with my dad. I was like, Dad, I really, really like this story and this script, and I can see it. And I was really, really excited about it. I worked really hard on the audition, and I came in, I did the initial read with you guys, and then I got a call back. And when I came back to the callback, I came back with pink hair. So I was trying to morph your vision and be like, I'm the one. Look. And I guess I didn't know at this point what Amara's vision for the whole story was, that with colors and everything. It was mentioned lightly in the script. She had pink hair and details like that, but I didn't know to the extent about the sort of pixie, like emo thing. That was a whole subculture I didn't know about, and it was really fun to dive into that with you. But I kind of went in more, I don't know.
Well, I remember the very first time you read, because with the girls, the very first day of the first reads, Jenna and I were there, the producer, myself, and Madison came in, and when she finished, we were both just like we both, our heads just like dropped and mouths dropped open. And from that minute on, Jenna's like, she's the one, and I'm like, we're seeing everybody, I'm keeping an open mind. You know, to be really honest, I'm like, she's so beautiful. Like, I wasn't imagining Maya so beautiful. But
You imagining her?
Well, now I can only imagine Madison. Like, now it's just, she is Maya. That's it. And that's the way it should be and the way it always will be. But at the beginning, before we ever met Madison, I was imagining her, you know, maybe a little bit chubby or, you know, a little bit more not gorgeous. I don't know.
So what, again, there's a very specific idea. What did she bring to her?
Oh, well, she's brilliant. I mean, it was just like the first read, like I said, after the very first read of the first audition, the producer was set, and she just is so special. There's just something, you know, when you're doing auditions, you want the actors to be good. You're never rooting against anyone. We're always sitting there rooting for every single actor, you know.
Because you know.
Maybe for me, I can't speak for, you know, like casting directors and other directors, but for me, I always, and I believe it's true for most filmmakers, we want it to be a hard choice. We want everyone to be good. We want everyone to feel comfortable and go for it. But yeah, with Madison, she was just very magical from the beginning. Montana was like so sexy and gorgeous. Her first audition tape, we didn't get to see it. Like, she just slated and then it cut off, and the tape stopped, I guess. So I never got to see her first read. And when I saw her on camera, I was like, oh my gosh, she's so gorgeous. I wonder if she can even act, because she's so, like, I wonder if she can even say a line.
I forgot my lines in our chemistry read. I was sitting next to her and I was
she's
like,
so good. And then when she came for the callback and I actually got to see her act and them act together, she was phenomenal as well.
Great chemistry with both of you.
She really
amazing.
does.
I wish she was here.
And she has a tough part because she has to play the duality. And then I'll say for Andrew, we just couldn't find the guy. We couldn't find him. So when he came in, I was just sitting there praying he was good. And I'd seen his self-tape and I knew. And like the first line he spoke, the first word, like just the tone of his voice, I was like, like I looked over at Alex, like, we found him. It's just like a tonal thing. It's nothing you can even necessarily control. It's more about like just doing your work and coming in and giving what you have. And it's just, you're going to fit or you're not. And they just, you know, fit perfectly. They made it their own. And that was such a beautiful thing about Madison. She came back for that chemistry read, like all in pink, like had totally gotten into the character. And it was, you know, it's cool to see. You want people that are excited, that want the part, you know?
I found the three of them had like a great combination of authenticity and vulnerability that they have in and of themselves and then put into the characters. I just love that from right off the bat.
I was going to comment on that too. What really moves me about the performances is the vulnerability that comes through these very different characters. You know, and it's really striking. So tell me, what were the hardest scenes, or I guess what was the hardest scene for both of you to film? With you, I'm going to guess maybe the rooftop scene.
Can I give a preface
to
this?
Please.
That was our first scene we filmed.
Yeah, that was the first scene on the first day was the rooftop. Yeah. So really quick, I'll just say we shot the whole thing in 12 days. It was very rushed. It was like the 1 week in LA that it rained straight, so we were like flipping around scenes.
We were sick.
The schedule was actually crazy. I forgot that when editing the film because I couldn't tell from their performances, but I'll just preface by saying it was a crazy schedule and they had to produce very quickly. Sometimes we just did 2 takes.
How long did it take you to?
12 days we shot the film, yeah.
You're kidding me.
And
Less
from
than
writing
2
the
weeks.
script to the rough cut, it was 1 year. So we were
With
like
rain.
really, yeah, with rain. So what was the
And
hardest
Montana
scene
and
for
I
you
were
guys?
sick the entire
Yes, and then they got
What?
sick, and then everyone was sick,
So
and then they had to kiss.
How
and then
long
they
were the
couldn't kiss.
dates? So this is just fascinating, you know, because this is a situation that any young actor could come into on a film when you find out, oh, you might only get to do 2 takes, and oh, we have to finish in less than 2 weeks. And so how long were your long days? And how
We stuck to the SAG regulations, so we never. I think that only one day we went overtime.
Yes, only
It
one
was
day.
regular full. No, it was regular
They
full
were full
12-hour
days, we
days
packed
for
a
the
lot
crew
in.
and 10-hour days for the actors. But what were the hardest scenes for you guys to shoot?
I think one of the hardest scenes was the one where we all 3 finally connect in the same place. That was just emotionally taxing, and we had to do it so many times from every different angle, and it was just exhausting. And that was near the end of the shoot too, and the whole movie is so emotional, and so I was so emotionally spent by the time that we started filming that, and that was definitely one of the harder scenes for me.
I remember at the very end of the last take, you're like, I'm never doing that again. Like, she was so
I was
in it, and we had to do that one so many times that you were just like spent.
and then we had to do ADR, and I had to do ADR that scene, and I was like, no.
so how many takes did you give them for that one?
Well, that one,
That was the
she was,
POV. That was
that was the ones from the point of view. But for you, it was that Is It Jasmine is in the shot before. So not to be too technical, but the confrontation's just in the 3 shots from the point of view. But the moment before where she goes, Is it Jasmine? And she has the realization is the scene with her and her father. So she had to do it like many, many times. You had to get into that point where I don't know if we actually shot the POV shots that many times, like maybe like 5 or 6 takes each shot.
Yeah, we didn't have. I remember we were running out of time.
We were rushing, yeah.
Wow. And what was the toughest scene for you personally in the film?
I mean, I don't know what anybody else's raison d'etre is for being an actor, but it's when you're really rocking and rolling with like the heavy duty anger, the absolute joy. That's the sandbox. That's the playtime, and so you just like really just let your reptilian self go. So that's not hard so much as it is like that's the release. The hardest part for me was because it was such a tight schedule and things because of logistics or the flu that was traveling around our set. That you're seeing the emotional development in the sequence and you know who knows what at what point. So that was the hardest part. So apart from doing, the research we were talking about before with drugs and addiction, I just made a map for an emotional topography map of like, okay, so we're here on the map and I can't know this yet. I don't know that yet. I have anger here, but it's not anger because of that, because I don't have that bit of information yet. So the hardest thing for me, which it forces you to do your work excessively, is to know what you're supposed to be feeling and what you're supposed to be knowing at any given point. Because on day 1, you might be in the last 10 minutes of the film and vice versa. So that's just the sort of a technical, let me just map it out. But once you've given yourself that guidepost of like, here, okay, I know, right at the end where it's like, I know, but I know that she doesn't know what I know. And that's just a fine little dance that you have to dance. So it's a challenge and I welcome it, and especially for a project like this that was so well conceived and written. But that methodology was certainly the hardest thing for me.
I love that, and I love how you described it as playing in the sandbox. One timely question that relates to the film. I mean, Jasmine, her character, being this fashion designer, she uses Instagram and social media to promote herself. And it made me wonder, like, what do you two see as your obligation as actors beyond the 12 days in terms of promoting this film with social media? And, also, like, I feel like actors now are expected to be brands, and how do you balance that with wanting to be a character actor that can effortlessly disappear into a pink wig, or, a character struggling with addiction? And so, I mean, what do you two see as your role in, like, promoting this work with social media? Because I feel like that's something that all young actors, have to fit. Even Jake Gyllenhaal just went on Instagram. So, like, what, I was like, oh my God,
I have to go.
what's that about?
I think for me, that's one of the big struggles. I genuinely wish I didn't have to have Instagram, but now it seems as though it's a vital tool, and people care so much about your followers because that's a dollar sign, and it's hard. I think it's hard too because one thing I also hate about it is how much it breeds comparison, and I never want to. No one's trying to make anyone feel lesser than, but people are showing a highlight reel of their lives, and I think I don't want to participate in making anyone feel that way, whether it's on purpose or on. Well, I've never purposely do that, but like on accident. And but I think luckily our film is about inclusivity, and it's and I think I love this movie, and so I want to promote this movie, and it's a very, very easy task for me to put this on my social media and be like, please watch this because I care about it. So luckily with this project, I really love it, and I love who I made it with, and so promoting it for me is a pleasure, and I'm so happy we're at this place where the world finally gets to see it. But I think in general, the way Instagram, its relationship with this industry is something that I've sort of had to tackle in my mind, how I want to be, and no one should think that much about how they want to be seen, and that's so exhausting to think about your own identity in that way, and it feels narcissistic. So I don't know. It's an interesting subject.
It's sort of your job now,
it is. It
right?
is. Yeah, it
It's sort of
absolutely is.
everybody's job now, right?
And you have to accept that. Yeah. Yeah.
What about you, sir?
Thank you, sir. I have no I mean, if I do, I don't have a huge Instagram or Twitter following or whatever. If I do it, it's going to be, I'm not a selfie guy, but I will do sort of my own unique take on the world. And if I do start to build up a following, it's going to be in my own sort of way of approaching it. Hopefully it won't be, narcissistic, and hopefully it won't be in sort of the normal way. And I think that's how you can maintain a sense of identity. In the same way that you bring your own spin to a performance, you bring your own spin to how you picture the world. I think I have no problem, and I've gone to all the festivals as much as I can to help promote this film because it's a project I absolutely believe in. So just to the notion of promoting a film like this, game on. To the notion of how I present myself through social media, it's going to be in my own way, and if people have an affinity for that, great. We'll just have to see how it goes.
And I will say that we have an Instagram page for the film itself at Daddy Issues Movie. So we have a whole, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram with our own following just about the film, just with the aesthetics of the film.
When you started out as an actress 12 years ago, this
There was no social media when I started out.
So I'm just curious to hear your perspective. How do you see that?
I feel very similar to Madison in the sense of like, so when I was in high school, we started getting like AOL, AIM, and then when I was like, my generation is the generation that Facebook started when I was in college, so we're kind of like the last to grow up without cell phones and the first to kind of step into the social media era. And it's very weird because it's like, how do I represent, like, who am, like, what do people want to, people don't want to see this, people want to, like, so it's kind of just always that, I used to struggle with, like, do I have a, public page, what do I share, what don't I share? Now I don't care as much, and I just kind of put all my efforts into the Daddy Issues Instagram because at least it was one aesthetic and one brand and one kind of mission. But as an individual, it's hard, especially when you're an artist and you like to be other characters or tell stories that are not necessarily you. It's hard to then be like, well, then how do I transition into a brand myself? Because the whole thing I love about making art is getting to step away from that.
Do you have any advice for the people in the audience? Because I feel like personal publicists are very expensive, and I feel like when you're an up and coming actor, I feel like you're now expected to sort of be your own publicist, and that's a very different hat. And what advice do you have for
my
our
biggest
crowd?
piece of advice would be to get a group of friends together, whether it's like in an acting group or something, and like film your own stuff for fun, just to kind of do something. Like, don't just wait for the audition. Like, you can work your butt off and go on so many auditions, but if you have that extra time to kind of get a little group together, or even just one partner, and kind of concept your own things, I think picking up a camera, or even just with your phone, practicing like that is a great thing. Just because we're in this age that, people like want to look you up on social media. It's like, oh, what's your handle? like that's what people want to know, and then they go on and it's like, well, let me tell what their personality's like and who they are by this instead of this. So that's very interesting. But another piece of advice I would say is, maybe you don't want to be a filmmaker, maybe you don't want to pick up a camera, maybe you want to be an artist and an actor. Don't be scared to just only give all of your energy to acting. Like, if you have the urge to pick up painting one week, go for it. If you feel like writing a poem when you're having coffee, go for it. Because when you just keep letting your creativity flow and putting it into as many things as you can, or whatever inspires you, it'll naturally build upon itself. Like for me, I started acting just to express myself, and now I started directing to really communicate, and I it was a natural progression. I was just following the inspiration to be an actor. So just follow your inspiration, whatever that is, and don't feel like you have to focus all your energy on acting, because living life will help your acting.
I just want to end with a great question from the audience, which is just, what was the biggest challenge of getting this film made, and how did you overcome it?
For me, the biggest challenge, I think, is just I think the greatest asset and ally I have is having a partner that believes in me, but also the greatest challenge is having a partner that has an opinion. So it's like, you know, it's that thing that it's like, oh, we have this great thing because we can create together, but we also will butt heads and go back and forth for hours and hours and hours and hours about whatever one line or one scene. So I think that was the biggest challenge, was just really getting the script written. The rest is fun, even though you wouldn't know it because I'm very serious on set, but it is fun.
This film is such an important addition to the canon of queer cinema. What do you want people to take away from it?
The film, or the process of the film making?
The film.
Be your
Answer ready about what was the hardest part.
What do I want to? I want to be yourself. And I think it actually, you can extrapolate that to your question about social media too, which is, yes, publicists are very expensive and sometimes necessary, sometimes not. You have to, it's a necessary evil today, the social media and the need for it. But it's about being your own publicist. It's also about being your own advocate, right? And if maybe you look at it that way, it's a little less on the narcissism scale, on the how do I come off scale, and a little bit about, here's who I am. This is who I want to be in this very moment, and I'm expressing that. And I think that's the thing I would, we start the movie by saying, follow your dreams or they'll chase you forever. And that is something that I think I would love people to take away from the film. You all have aspirations. We all have aspirations. We all have hopes and dreams and desires. We're gonna never stop trying to get there, but be aware you're gonna go through, the river Styx.
I think the message of following your dreams is a beautiful way to end this panel. I'd like to thank everyone for coming.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks for staying, guys. Thank you
so much.